All right. Now we're live. Are we? Are we live? Yes, we are live. Cool. Let's see if the thumbnail is the correct one. And yes, it is. Cool. Sorry, guys. All right. So we're gonna wait for, as usual. We're gonna wait for a little bit so people can join. Yeah. How you guys doing? I see a lot of mood boards, and honestly, I'm very excited. Excited to see your projects, your little worlds, personal stories. All right. Let me share the link for everybody with the correct thumbnail. I hope the crows will not interrupt. They were laughing at me again today in the morning. I think they're just, waiting. We should, I should film and name every crow. There's like 4 crows that usually do their thing in the morning. All right. How is the sound, by the way? Is my magnificent voice awesome and clear? Is it better than last time? Did somebody say? Yeah. Hello, everybody. Crow 1, Crow 2, Crow 3, and 4. Awesome. Yeah, because last time, sadly, something was wrong with my microphone settings, and the sound was not as good. But today, I think it's much better. Okay, cool. Very cool and strong voice. Yes, that's my voice. Yeah, today's gonna be super fun. We're gonna wait for 3 more minutes, and yeah. All right, let me close off Discord, or make it little. Doink. I hope internet is gonna be fine today. It should. And let me see all your magnificent names in the chat box so I can see what's going on. Let's go. If possible, guys, the regular thing, share it with your, grandma, broskies, more people see this, better chance that this project will succeed and go on. So if possible, copy the link, post it to your social medias, Instagram. I did make a post on Instagram, so repost that. That'll be really highly appreciated, and it'll mean the world to me. Okay, we have 2 more minutes till we start. All right. Photoshop file ready. And yeah. Dun. Hey everybody. People are joining. Water similar. Sorry guys. maybe the microphone is set up too good now. I hope it's not too uncomfortable. Good morning from California. Cool. 1 more minute till we start. Oh yeah. Still kind of chilly. You almost felt that in your brain. Sorry. Someone is telling their hamster right now that we're streaming. Good. Alright, we have 30 seconds until we start. The voice of someone who does cold showers in the morning. Cold showers are really good for you guys, so if there's one secret to visual development and, you know, success in your career, it's cold showers. We will have questions at the end of the stream. Yes, I'll try to. We'll do our regular program. We'll talk about the world building process today. We're gonna look at some existing projects. I had a really good opportunity today. I asked a really good friend of mine, Sabri, who is a CEO and director and an ultimate Viking warrior of a company called B Square. And they gave me permission to share some of the world building that I did for their project. It's an unreleased project, but all that a little bit later. All right, we should start. All right, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. Welcome to lecture number 4. Today is going to be a very exciting day, you know, because we're going to be now diving into actual world building, actual visual development, and this week we actually start painting. Last week we developed our mood boards. There's hundreds of mood boards that I saw in the homework finished Discord channel, and honestly, it's amazing what you guys are doing. So good job with surviving week 1. It wasn't that hard, but you know what? We start slow, and then we're building up, you know, the challenge. So it's gonna be good. So today I'm gonna be showing you 2 projects, and then after I show you the 2 projects, we're gonna go on a kind of like a speedrun version of world building pipeline, or how I usually approach world building. What questions do I ask myself usually, and how I build on top of those questions, and how the world slowly assembles itself basically from nothing into everything. So let me show you a super cool project called Goons and Goblins. And I prepared a super cool transition for you today. So now it overlaps like this. So, ooh, production quality. Yes, so this little image that I did here was one of the first images that I did for an interesting project. It's going to be a mobile game called Goons and Goblins by B Square. And maybe at the end of the stream, I'll show you a little teaser trailer that they did for it. It's currently in development. But a good friend of mine, Sabri, who is the director of the project and the CEO of the company, said, all right, Misha, you can show it. Just don't show everything. I will not be showing any gameplay stuff, but I'll be showing only the world building aspects of the project that I did. So, how did I approach the Guns and Goblins project? Don't worry, I'll show everything a little bit later. But in the beginning, when a new IP is developed, and B Square were developing this Goblin project, it's about those little green spankadoodles who basically come into the world and they either want to conquer it or they just discovered a new world. I don't want to spoil the story itself, right? Before you play the game and stuff like that. But my task at hand was this. Sabri came to me and said, yo, Misha, we have this game that we're developing, and we're developing the gameplay and the game mechanics. But the team needs to understand what the world is, how it works, who are the goblins, where do they live, what their personality is, and maybe what are the stories within the world. We'll have some guidelines for you, but honestly, go wild. Experiment, see where you can go with it, and that is going to be served as inspiration for the team. So actually what they did is they would print out some of it, they would go and discuss the keyframes that I would do, and then that would spark their imagination. And sometimes maybe it would even influence the gameplay or the designs or the color palettes and everything else. So Sabri came up to me and said, okay, Goblin project, you know, the world is not created yet. We have a little bit of mock-ups and, you know, some concept art here and there from our artists, but we need to somehow bring it all together. How it's going to look, you know? And after our call, and Sabri described what he had a little brief, he had a little script, he had a little bit of references, and, you know, we went on a brainstorming. It's like, is it feels like this? Does it feel like that? And Sabri's kind of said, well, I don't know. Let's find out, you know? So what do you do when you have an idea and you're kind of lost where to start? Well, you know, the main goal is you need to start somewhere, you know? A starting point can be anywhere as long as it supports the story and the narrative, right? So for me, the logical thing would be is to start with, where do the goblins live? What do they do? What is their day-to-day life? So I did this little layout, you know. First, I gathered some references in terms of the color palette and stuff like that. We had the surface of the world, right? And then we had the underground of the world, because that's what Sabri's idea was. So I was like, okay, so goblins who live underground, but they also have a settlement above the ground that they just came out of the caves, you know? So I started sketching. So I did, you know, very rough block out of the layout. I'm like, okay, what does the surface looks like? You know, are they kind of like those gladiator guys? Are they very overly protective of their village? You know, will they have spikes? Will they have gates? You know, are goblins prideful? Maybe they have like a whole statue dedicated to themselves, you know? And this is the stage when you just go, you know, very loose, very wild, and just try different things out and experiment, right? So I'm kind of like, all right, so I'll start with the surface. There's mountains, there's trees, you know, there's the town itself. Maybe they're fighting there. I don't know. Maybe we'll have the gate, you know, and then maybe a few houses here. Okay, cool. Now to the underground. How do they get into the underground? So they dug, right? So let's make sure there's an elevator, right? And then we go down to the first level. I'm like, okay, goblins, they like gold, right? So let's make sure we'll have like a little gate with a little tunnel where all of the gold is stored. Okay, cool. Right? It's kind of going intact with the goblin's personality. We'll have that, you know, the above the surface town, but their gold, they should be probably protected underground. Because if I was a goblin, you know, I would store my gold underground, you know. So every time when we develop a story, right, we have a little outline. It's a goblin world that they just dug outside and now they're exploring. So I'm like, okay, so probably their, you know, little civilization developed more underground, since that's where they lived, and above the ground is going to be not so much. So in terms of like percentages, how much I designed above the ground and underground, you can see it's like 10 to 90%, right? And every time you develop any kind of story, a character, an environment, you have to always question yourself, what if I lived there? What would I do if I was a goblin, you know? And the cool thing about visual development is you get to be a little actor, you know? You kind of like, I'm a goblin, I have gold, you know? And you kind of try to, you know, live in the skin of your main protagonists and your world, you know? When I'm creating piece of concept art or visual development pieces, I usually try to be in the moment, in the world, and like if it's a super cool Viking who is fighting a giant cyclops, I go Valhalla, and I try to hear the music, smell all the smells in the world and stuff like that. So main thing when you're just starting, turn your imagination on, try to be in the world, close your eyes, put some music on, get some references, and just, try to explore. And then when you get to a moment where you're like, you know what, I can picture it pretty well, go sketch it out. So that's what happened here. For like one day, I didn't sketch. I was just staring into my monitor, looking at the notes, and just imagining myself as a goblin, So the next thing that I did is like, all right, so the goblins, that's where they live, above, they have the gold mine. The little goblin is kind of like putting some things. Has to be like 2 giant guards for sure. They probably have some, little things that they can jump on, like a ladder, like a little elevator, and a little like a blacksmith station where they're gonna, forge all the things for the upside. For the surface world, a few bridges, because people need to walk in there. So you try to and another thing is like goblins are not really good at they're not IKEA, they don't do pretty stuff. Goblins are all about little hammer here, little, it's kind of like duct tape and nails, and crooked wood. So the design itself is already, it's kind of like, it's not super architectural, awesome, super calculated bridge. It has to be broken down because, they're super practical. They're not perfectionists. They're like, oh, okay, they spit in both of their hands and they lay something down, and if it kind of works, kind of functional, they leave it like that. And again, that comes from imagining yourself being part of the world and being a goblin. We should probably rename this lecture "How to Be a Goblin" instead of "How to World Build." But another thing that I did, I'm like, okay, I'm at the surface. There's a blacksmith station, the gold mine, and I'm like, you know what? If I was a goblin, goblins are probably not very brave. They're not very, they're not very heroic. They're like rats. They're like tribal. Type of people. So I was like, I'm gonna make an emergency exit for them that is gonna be masked out by a rock and a bunch of bushes. But because you know what, if I was a goblin and I'm a coward, I would love to have an escape route. So I designed this. Is it super useful for gameplay? No, but you know what? It's nice to think about those things, especially if you're in animation. All right, let's go lower. I'm like, okay, so we have kind of like level 2, and then we have level 3. So over here I'll have like a goblin's market or something like that. It's pretty sketchy, You yourself probably can't really recognize what it is, but they're gonna be probably different stations, because even goblins need to, exchange stuff and, buy a fish, buy something to eat and stuff like that. And in the beginning it's so loose, but it's a nice thing to think about, even though if it's not gonna make into the gameplay or final animation. Like, what does my character eat? Where does my character live? Maybe part of this is gonna be like housing, and part of this is gonna be the market. Another thing I was like, goblins probably are brawlers, so I thought like, what if I'm gonna have a little arena, and they have like the arena stand, and that's where they fight, and all the losers, they go down the hole, for example, And I'm like, okay, cool, good for now, and then I go down even more, stairs, the wonky stairs go down, and then that's the fun part, Goblins are weapon makers, they're all about, war and conquering and stuff like that. So I'm like, what if there's like a little dummy goblin that they, test their crossbows on, and then there's like a few goblins who also are carrying like all of the weaponry and stuff like that up into the above world, you know? What if they're testing their, you know, their cannon by shooting their goblins into like a little target, and a guy is testing his flamethrower, you know? And when they have like a giant chainsaw, and so on and so on and so on. Now to the fun part, you know, because this is a world with a twist, and Sabri said, you know what, it's like, what if this happened? And there's like an alien ship, you know, crashed a long time ago. Like, ooh, goblins could build an entire civilization around alien technology? Interesting. Interesting, right? What would happen if this? The main thing is, like, if you don't know what my Lumber Saga project is, my Lumber Saga project is, what if Norse mythology was explained by aliens crashing into the Viking world? So when Sabri came to me with this, I'm like, dude, I got you. This is awesome. This is super cool, right? So I'm like, okay, now I understand why they're crafting all their weapons. Because what they're doing is they are standing in line, disassembling, you know, welding, you know, kind of like, you know, very chaotically going, you know, breaking things apart, and then in their crude way reassembling it into weapons on this station. So as you can see over here, I made a little elevator so people can, or goblins can go and then go back, put everything on an elevator, go up, and that's where the fun starts. That's where they build the weapons, then they test them out, and then they ship it up for war. You know, and then I was like, you know what? Old robots are cool. I like Iron Giant, so why not have a, you know, like a robot in here, and pieces of the alien ship on like little strings and stuff like that. This is gonna be a super cool, awesome game. Another thing, I'm like, all right, so goblins are like, okay, they're pretty primitive, so it's going to be like wood and stuff, but at the same time they're using the technology. So I'm like, you know what, they probably need electricity. So I'm like, okay, you know what, let me make a little water mill. And then there's going to be like a goblin statue drooling saliva, and that's going to generate all the power to the ship to keep it powered, you know, and then the rest of this civilization is going to be powered by that. And I'm like, cool. It works. And as I was developing this whole little world in a pretty, you know, pretty simple sketch, you know, random moments started appearing in my brain. I'm like, you know what? What about this moment right here? There's two guards guarding gold. You know, I'm like, you know what? How about this? Giant goblin dudes and little goblin dudes are like, you know, they have, those are like train tracks, and they're delivering the gold in like those little things. I'm like, cool. It could be a nice, interesting moment. So I'm already thinking about keyframes, you know. What's the story? Another variation of the same thing. It's like those goblins are looking up and like, hey, what's up? Like one goblin's been getting up on top of the giant goblin's guard, and they're like, yeah, gold, let us in, type of a deal, you know. It's interesting, and you know what? This is very sketchy, and it's okay to throw away. But this is me exploring, thinking about not only the layout, but also the emotional aspect of the story. What's the interaction between different, you know, members of the society? You know, the goblin guards are kind of like, ooga booga, you know, and then the little ones are like, wah, katibo, katikba, you know, type of a deal. And it's nice to make sound designs too as you paint, you know, because it brings extra, you know, extra story, extra, you know, extra flair, and you're having fun while you do it, you know. I had a blast doing this project. I did a lot of paintings in a very small amount of time, because I was just so involved and in love with the world that Sabri has created, and I was really grateful that I could be part of it, you know. So next thing that I did, I'm like, all right, what about next moment? So like, okay, what about, you know, a super cool establishing shot with goblins kind of like, yeah, our hometown, or they're visiting from another colony or something like that. I didn't do this one, but it was nice to explore. Another thing, I was like, all right, what if they are here? So they just got some parts from the alien ship, and they went up, you know, they started building. I was like, what about a frame where they're testing out a bomb, you know, and they're gonna hammer it down because they're gonna test it out in a goblin way, and they're gonna like, ooh, bomb, doing kapoosh, you know, because goblins would be very destructive, you know. And then I was like, all right, what about this cool shot? You know, they are, you know, there's the robot, and they're marching towards the alien ship, and then they're marching the other way around with the parts, and there's gonna be a bunch of torches, and that's me, you know, getting this keyframe out of my layout, out of my little, you know, world plan. And as you are working on any part of your world building projects, it could be like a little statue, you know, like this. Who built this statue? Goblin, the statue builder? You know, where does the statue builder lives? You know, and that's the thing. It's called associative thinking. When you're working on one thing, your brain wanders off into another thing. But see, I had to start somewhere. So I started, where do goblins live? And when I was starting to develop where the goblins live, questions started to appear. Okay, so they live here. But how do they get to here? Elevator. Okay, what's below the main town? Maybe it's a gold mine? Why is it underground? Well, it's protected the most. Makes sense. You know, why do they make everything underground? Well, because, you know, they didn't develop the upstairs that much, you know, and they lived for hundreds of years underground. So it makes sense that everything functional should be underground, you know. And, you know, as you go through associative thinking and, you know, questions and answers, you can get to insane stories and insane world twists. You know, another thing that I did, I'm like, what about maybe there's like this one welder. Like, see this guy right here that I sketched out? I really like this little doodle, so I'm like, you know what about this as a thumbnail? Like, you know, he's like, la 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 la, you know, and goblins to the left, I'm like, wah, 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 wah. You know, they're just ripping out the the wires out of the alien ship, and they're building, and everyone behind them is like, yeah, will you hurry up? It's my turn, you know. And that's the first stage, you know. That's what I did when Sabri came to me and said, how do you think the goblin world functions? And this was my first explorational sketches, you know. And my next step is elaborating, not only bringing kind of like structure to the idea, but also pushing it to the next level. So after that, I did this, you know, and now the goblin world is a little bit more developed, you know. This is the official epic logo of Guns and Goblins. We're gonna watch the teaser at the end of the stream, but, you know, now we're talking a little bit more in depth, right? Okay, so now I'm like, you know what, upstairs or above the ground, I want everything to look like this. It's gonna be cheerful and brightful and awesome. And you know what, goblins are prideful people, so you know what, they're gonna have a goblin statue on top of a pub. You know, and goblins are like, yay, beer. I don't know if it's gonna make in the game, but that was my initial, you know, initial thoughts. I'm like, okay, cool. And there's probably like roads to the other settlements and stuff like that. Okay, and see, super sketchy stuff like this then goes into here. So let's go downstairs. See, now I'm like, all right, let's go on the elevator down. There's a little goblin sitting down, you know, and then we have, you know, a little blacksmith doing, like developing some kind of bombs or, you know, shields and stuff. And here we have the, you know, remember the secret entrance in the bushes, you know, and this guy is using it right now. And I'm like, you know what? It should probably be lit so they know where it is, you know. And then next one is like, remember that keyframe that I did with those kind of like goblin guards? Here they are, and the guy's like, hey, here's some gold, and he's throwing it in the air. And then there's goblins just having a party with no pants on for some reason. I should fix that, you know. And they are, you know, they taking some gold to buy some weapons probably. And then yeah, remember the settlement itself. Like I thought that, you know, goblins probably don't have a currency, and they just probably live as a tribe, and it probably all the food is just free, or all the food they probably share, or whoever got their hands first on the food gets it, You know, so I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna do a bunch of houses. And you know what, I really like this little moment here, and I did paint a keyframe for this moment. And I painted a keyframe for this moment, and I'll show you a little bit later. But see, it's called process of adding. In Pixar, they show it too. You know, it's about finishing the first stage, questioning yourself, a bunch of questions, answering some of them, but then leaving some for the next phase. And the next phase was color, texture, you know, more defined things. And, you know, like, for example, over here, I'm like, you know, they're miners. And then there's two goblins mining. And then there's a giant snake going, ah! You know, and it's really, really long snake, you know. And the tunnels, they go really far into the underground, you know. And all right, let's go to the fun part, you know. Now, you know, the gladiators, you know, we have the gladiator stand, and the goblins go wah 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 wah, and then this guy's name is probably Gork, and they go Gork Gork Gork, and he goes rah, you know, and he throws down the goblins down by winning, and this guy going and this guy is barely hanging. You know, those are little details, you know. They're not very designed, but you know what? When the team will see this, they will get their own little ideas. What if this? What if that? What if this will lead to this gameplay solution or something like that? So my job was to create a world that felt real enough, so the team itself could, you know what? How can we make a game that will represent this world? You know, so next one is, you know, stairs going down, and now, you know, like over here we probably have some goblins splattered, you know, probably a dead goblin, and over here some goblin, you know, just exploded, and they were testing a bomb or something, and this hardcore goblin is like, well, does this crossbow work? And you know, he's just testing out the armor or something like that, you know. And then this one is super fun, you know. What if the goblins are gonna use themselves as weapons, and they'll have kind of like, you know, super sharp, you know, hats, and they're gonna go pew. That's another thing. Like, poor other goblins who missed the mark, you know. And then it's like, how would they, you know, test out, you know, flamethrowers? And these goes like, you know, and they go ah, you know. And that's the fun part. It's like, okay, what about the, you know, the crazy scientist part? And see, I kind of like trying to separate everything with colors. So like, for example, this area had this color palette that is more kind of like, you know, with projectors and stuff like that to show that it's a test ground. This is more moody and tribal, you know. This one has a little bit more gold colors in it because it's kind of like where they do the gold, and this one is kind of just more kind of like casual, happy village vibe type of a deal. And this is like the crazy scientist green. So see, design comes first, and the layout, and then ideas, and then, you know, color. It pushes the story and the narrative even further, you know. And then there's those guys, you know, and I'm gonna show you the keyframe for this moment too, and they're like testing out a bomb. It's like, well, oh, is it gonna explode? Is it gonna not? What if it's gonna happen if I'm gonna hit it? You know. And the thing is, I could have not implemented any of those stories to this, and would have served just as well. But you know what, go above and beyond when you're doing your job, you know. Immerse in your world, you know, feel it, you know, live in it, and you're gonna have so much fun, you know, because that's what visual development is. It's world building. We are little gods of our own universes, you know, not in a prideful way, you know, in a creative and awesome way, you know. And like, for example, here it's like, okay, well, there's an elevator, and there's probably has to be like an elevator guy, you know, who pulls the switch, and you know, and those goblins who finally got the parts that I'm gonna raise up, you know. And I'm like, okay, another thing is like, how do they get light? And so I'm like, you know what, they're probably gonna have just candles on top of their heads, you know. And yeah, so see, like this little guy just welding on the ship, you know, and the ship has to be like broken down, like you have to imagine, like, what if the ship was there for a really long time? What kind of damage it sustained? You know, how far apart are they gonna take the ship? You know, for how many years was this happening and stuff like that. And another thing is, like, I added water into all of this just to make, and this is some cool romantic goblins. I don't know, maybe not. Just, you know, just two buddies fishing. You know, I think I had a fishing pole before for all of them. Yeah, and like, what about, you know, oh, this guy is fishing, you know, I just put it as a detail. And another thing, because, you know, Sabri really likes Lord of the Rings, I made a little golem, goblin with a ring, you know, and yeah, so that's what I end up with after the layout stage, you know, and like, I drew all the parts that they're carrying, you know, and stuff like that. And yeah, so that was the first layout. And maybe here there's like a little leak underneath because they dug underneath the lake. So that was the, you know, that was the stage after I like, okay, this is how the Goblin world kind of functions. I talked with Sabri, the director, we got some ideas here and there, and then went to the next stage. And I painted all of this, made everything presentable and nice to inspire the team. And then Sabri was like, you know what? This is awesome. I wonder what kind of stories there are out there more in the world. And I'm like, Sabri, do you want me to explore more? And he's like, you know what? I think, yeah. And cheers to Sabri, because a lot of productions will not, you know, will not see any value in that. And Sabri knows that it's crucial to his world building aspect of it, so that his team understands how the Goblin world works, you know, how what kind of core emotions are out there, what the main themes are and stuff like that. And on this project, I had a lot of liberty to do technically whatever the hell I wanted to, which is super cool and awesome, and I love those kind of projects. So next thing that I did, I was like, you know what? I really loved those little key moments that I found out in this world. So I said, Sabri, you know what? Let me paint them. You know, I'll choose a few that will push the story further, you know, and he said, go ahead. So I painted, where is it? Those moments. Okay. So I started with this little goblin madness, you know, because the main thing is about those goblins that they are not very strong. They are, you know, they're strong in numbers, you know, and maybe they're awesome behavior and tribalism and stuff like that, but they need some hired help, you know. And one of the things is in this world that there's like, that's why the game is called Goons and Goblins. Those goblins are there to hire help, hire heroes and stuff like that. So since that was the premise of the story, I was like, you know what? What's the hiring process looks like, you know? Like, there's gonna be this stupid guy who's like, you know, and the goblins are like, yes! You know, this guy goes, woo, we got a hero on our side, yeah! This guy is like really ecstatic. It's like, yes, thank you, God. And this guy's like, hero, you know? And this guy is just, you know, I got a knife. And this guy has no idea what he signed up for. You know, got 2 crosses here and there. And that was like one of the first paintings, you know? And Sabri is like, you know what? That feels great. We should evolve it more. I'm like, okay, you know what? Let's dive into the moment. You know, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to choose this moment because I want to see more personalities of goblins, you know? And you know what? After that one, I'm like, okay, how do goblins test out their weapons? So I'm like, you know what? What about this? You know, and this one is super fun because like this is the main scientist is like, well, what if I shoot it? What if it's gonna be lit up and then I'm gonna, you know, smash it down with a hammer this guy just can't wait what's gonna happen. This guy's like, yeah, let's go. And this guy's like, oh boy. And you know, from the last time he already endured, but I have no idea why he's still with those guys, you know. And you know, those kind of little moments, even though it didn't contribute much to the gameplay itself, it's just fun place you can go explore. And let's say if the team like sees something like this, it might influence something, you know. And again, not every project looks like this. Not every project is developed like this, because the thing is, Sabri sees value in this, and let's say a lot of game companies or game directors will not see value in this, you know. And it comes to your director. Honestly, my approach to all of this is more like animation-like. And not every director can translate or see something in keyframes like this and translate it to a game. But the thing is, Sabri is a great storyteller, you know. And game design or games are little stories, you know, with gameplay mechanics in them. So he is a great director that can translate both worlds. He can connect the world of game design and the world of story together and not keep them separately. And right after that, he's like, you know what, well, we need goblins to fight, you know, we're gonna have a lot of fighting in the game, and you know what, just go wild. So I did this one, you know, this one is pretty crazy. I really like this one. There's a lot of things going on, you know, this guy's going, and then all the goblins go, whee, you know. This one is riding a giant mole going, ah. This guy is wearing like little, you know, little bouncy shoes with a mace going, wah. This guy has an axe, he goes, wah, you know. And then this guy is having a mechanical arm, and he punches it, his tooth comes out, you know. This is me, guys, leading you into battle. That's you on the rock, and goes, Valhalla, you know. And my main thing was like, what I'm exploring here is, you know, the world and how it feels, you know. And you know, like this guy's like trying to use a special legendary item, which is the Medusa's head, and this robot accidentally reflected, you know, the magic back into him, so he turned into a stone, you know. There's like broken shields and stuff like that, rockets everywhere. And this was like the first, you know, it's not even gameplay, it's just a mood piece to inspire the team and to develop the world further, you know. We started, you remember how we started? We started very, you know, unclean. It's a little bit wrong word. Very sketchy and loose, unclean. And then we kind of went a little bit more and see, but the thing is, it's so process of adding. You start somewhere, it brings you more questions, it brings you more ideas. And you know what? This is the rule that I have. If an idea is awesome, an idea is super exciting, I have to test it out. Because if I don't test the idea out, I'm not a true artist. Because the thing is, it's like, you know, many times we would be sitting with Sabri or with Toby or with Borja, you know, and just discussing a bunch of things. And then someone says, but what about this? And then everyone's kind of having like a little pause. And they're like, crap, we'll have to test it out because this sounds amazing and it supports the story. We should freaking do it. Because if we don't, we're not gonna live. We're not gonna bring justice to this project. So I started exploring even more, you know. So we got some, you know, the hiring process, you know, the big kaboom, you know, and kind of like the giant arena brawl, like, you know, you know. And the next thing that I started exploring is like the origins of the goblins, you know. And I'm like, all right, so an alien ship crashed a really long time ago. How would it feel? How would it look? You know? And I'm like, okay, let's do this, you know, it's when I was painting this, I had a little song inside my brain. It was like, you know, from the from the Seven Dwarfs. Nya 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 You know, but it was kind of like in a goblin way, you know. And I'm like, and I really like this guy, so I just kept, you know, putting the same guy over and over again, the same, because I fell in love with the little character, you know. And also I did a little homage to, well, you guys tell me what this looks like. All right, this is the alien for the aliens, but I just like doing those kind of things for Sabri because it's fun to hide things around. Yeah, and then I was like, you know, what if goblins forgot about their past? You know, what if they were like this super great nation a really long time ago, and then, you know, they lost their way. So I did this keyframe, like when goblins, you know, discover the Great Hall, and there's like all those heroes, like a mini King Goblin and the ultimate King Goblin and one-eyed King Goblin and mustache King Goblin, you know, and they're like, whoa, we were great once more. We should be great once more. And they're like, we're gonna take over the world. Yeah, you know, like those are little moments that kind of like just put story ahead. But you know what? There was one thing lacking, and I'm like, you know what? I am kind of like this. I'm like looking at the picture through, like, you know, not through somebody's perspective, but just on key moments on everybody as a main character. So you know what? I started, you know, diving even further, and I came up with a little gang of 3 people. You know, I called them the HR team, the hiring team that was tasked to hire the ultimate heroes for the goblins to take over the world. You know, we have the cute guy, we have the big guy, we have an old guy in the basket for the big guy, and then we have the enthusiastic salesman. He's like, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna find everybody, you know, and I'm gonna be great, I'm gonna prove that I'm a valuable asset to the colony, you know, and they go on for adventures, you know. And you know what, when I did this little paintings, I'd be like, you know what, this is great, this is cool, you know, let's do that, you know. And then the next shot is like, all right, what does their hiring process looks like? And then they're like, okay, you know, they find a giant snail. And this guy's like, snail, you know. And this guy's like, well, you shouldn't miss this on a giant opportunity. And the snail has no idea what's going on because it can't read, you know. And this guy's like, well, do you want legs? We can give you legs, you know. And the snail still has no idea what's going on. So she probably gonna follow them because she's stupid. I don't know. And then the next shot is like rock and roll music. You know, they're just welding, and then there's like plants in the backyard, and the snail still has no idea what's going on, and they're tuning it up. And then the next shot is like, to battle! Now snail has like a bunch of arms and legs and weapons and stuff like that, you know. And then they emerge victorious on the battlefield in goblin games, you know. And then the snail's like, you know, and then those dead goblins all around, you know. And none of this is probably gonna make into the gameplay, you know. But I was like, what if I go? Yeah, what if I go this route? You know, what if I explore the story like this? Is it gonna make, maybe the designs maybe gonna make into the game? Maybe, I don't know. But it's still, I needed to go their way because I wanted to show like what the process of recruiting of those goons looks like, you know. And you know, Sabri loved it, and he said, you know what, go ahead, do some more. And you know what, I did. I did some more, and I painted two more moments, a little bit more defined. And this is kind of like another monster who is attacking them. This guy's trying to recruit with a little with a little map of his, and the little goblin goes wee. But the big goblin is like, he's trying to run away, and this guy's like, well, I'm in trouble. And this guy just says, whoa. Yeah, this is one of the species that probably going to be in the game. Maybe not, I don't know, you know. When the game comes out, we'll see. But it's going to be super cool and very exciting game. Another thing, that like, there's this kind of like weird devil world thingamajig, and this guy's like, well, do you want to join the team? You know, they're all afraid, and this guy's like, wah, gamabanga, you know. And then there's another guy who just going wee into lava. And this guy has like a little ducky, you know. This guy just having a blast in his lava jacuzzi, and this guy just goes, wah! You know. And those kind of moments, like even though they don't dictate much, but let's say for example, this moment itself, it shows the personality, the emotion, but at the same time color palette. So now they can maybe use this as a color palette for the map. I don't know. Right now I am kind of a little bit. I don't have that much time to talk to Sabri about how the development is going, but you know, all those things can be served in the hands of a good director, and happily, Sabri is a really good director, so he can use this as inspiration to direct his team. Because you have to understand that our job is to serve the director, serve his vision, and keep him inspired, you know. Of course, provide value to the team, but the thing is, if the director knows what the world is, your visual choices, even those stories that don't really show any of the gameplay, you know, they can inspire director for actual technical solutions to the game, you know, design solutions to the game and everything else, because the director used you to visualize the world and create it and understand the rules of it to the best ability. Is it hard to get to this position that I was? Sometimes yes. Most of the jobs are not as awesome as this, you know, but I'm showing you the ultimate dream, you know, the jobs that are really cool. You know, everything else has elements of this. But then when the director comes to you and you can do a full package visual development assignment like this, there's nothing like that out there. And then another thing that I did for this is, where is it? Oh yeah, this one. Well, we're back to the beginning, you know. And this one was, again, see, things started very, just, you know, things started very loosely from far away with one painting, you know. Goblins emerging from underground for the first time. The world. Kawabunga! I'm here. And this guy's like, whoa, what the hell? There's a whole world, and there's like kingdoms, and a dragon going, yeah! You know, stealing a sheep, and there's like giant mushrooms everywhere. This is not gonna make it to the game 100%, I know, because Sabri said, well, it kind of feels different. But the thing is, if for the first time you're not gonna hit your mark, that's fine. Because when you're gonna be starting a painting, this painting is gonna lead you to this, then to this, then to like emotional moments like this, you know, and keyframes, you know, they're gonna lead you to keyframes like this, like the snail story, you know, or to, you know, the exploration illustrations like this, you know. But the main thing is you have to start somewhere and then assemble it as a giant puzzle that is gonna make sense, not in the beginning, but on the next stages, you know. So your responsibility is just taking it easy, getting all the right questions and answering them one by one. And then when you get a new idea by answering those questions, where do they live, what do they eat, what currency do they use, like where do they come from, it's gonna be like a giant puzzle that you're gonna assemble slowly. And the thing is, like, here's your story, like here's one tile of your story, right? Where do they live? And then like brings you, then it's like, well, what heroes that they have? That's another tile, you know. And then like, well, where do they sleep? And it's like, well, what creatures did they fight, you know? And see, this is like a little terrain. And then later on, slowly, you're gonna just, you know, build a whole world out of those questions. And it's gonna just assemble itself by answering those. But another thing is, do you have to develop everything, right? How did goblins, you know, evolve, you know, like thousands of years ago, I don't know, from a rock? No, it's not really necessary to explore that. So you have to understand that you cannot go too wide. You have to choose what parts of your world you choose to develop, that are crucial to the story, because you have to understand that we still had to make a game, and the game had a gameplay. I can't talk about the gameplay right now. I can't talk about the mechanics, right? But that was the main story that we were pursuing. So there was a goal, and the world had to be developed around this goal. When you have like super amazing worlds like Lord of the Rings, even Lord of the Rings did not start like as a whole. Tolkien started in one small area with one or two characters, and then builded more ground for them to walk on in their world, built more civilizations for those characters to meet and interact, and then he tried to figure out how all of this is just lives in harmony and stuff like that, right? Because before Lord of the Rings even, he was writing in Silmarillion, if I'm not mistaken. It was this weird world that he was developing. I might be mistaken, so prove me wrong if I'm wrong. Sorry for the blasphemy if I am committing blasphemy against Tolkien. But if I'm not mistaken, well, in the beginning there was The Hobbit, and then there was Silmarillion, I think, then Lord of the Rings, but I don't know. Sabri is a huge Lord of the Rings fan, the guy who is developing this game right now, so I hope I will not get in trouble, and, he wants to hire me pretty soon. I might get fired. But even Tolkien, he started somewhere, and then slowly assembled the pieces. But even for Lord of the Rings, he did like a small story of a hobbit, and the hobbit goes from location 1 to the mountain, and this is the path. So as we design their journey, we don't have to design everything else in the world. All we have to design is, their journey to the mountains from here to here, And then maybe he's like, what, Hobbit is a pretty freaking fun universe, And then he's like, all right, I'm going to go build. What's happening in this area of the world? What about this area of the world? And then slowly but surely, the whole world is becoming a giant map. And he knows every river, every nation, what they eat, what currency they use, like where do the ships travel and stuff like that. But it's impossible to start here. You can't have a vision for everything like this. You need to figure out, what is my story, and what are the necessary things to build around the story first. And if you fall in love with this world, and over like 4 or 5 years, you will figure out all of that, So yeah, that's how Goons and Goblins project was developed on world building stage by me and Sabri and other artists. All of the paintings that you saw here, those are my doodles. I'm really proud of this project because, that's where, and cheers to Sabri, where he just trusts his artists and he says, do whatever the hell you want. Here's the brief, but I'm open for new possibilities. And those moments don't come, super often, but when they do come, it's so awesome. Because you're just developing your world, and at the end of the day, you're getting paid for it, And I was like, wow, I'm blessed. So this is the Goblin project, and now a little bit about my own project. I didn't prepare too many paintings, right? But as you all guys know, I have the world of Lumber Saga, right? And in the world of Lumber Saga, there's many things. The main premise is, what if, the North mythology was explained by aliens crashing in the North world, And like, for example, I did as one of my first explorations for this world is I made this little environment, I'm like, what if they just built, a village around a spaceship? And before I even painted that image, I dove in pretty deep in terms of I was how do the houses look like? And I sketched out different, keyframe moments of a Viking, discovering the village. I'm like, is it gonna look something like this? And I'm like, well, what does the ship look like that crashed into the Viking world? Does it look like this? Does it look like that? I'm like, what's the trajectory of a ship? Like, what dents in the mountains and when the ship did when it crash landed, right? And then I'm like, okay, let's go back into the houses in the village, and now they're built around the engine, maybe one of the main engines. And it's like, do they gonna incorporate the alien technology in their houses? See question after question after question. I'm like, all right, what's the layout looks like? So remember from the first sketch there, where the ship landed between two mountains, I'm like, that's probably going to be the layout. So maybe they're all going to build like two towers. There's going to be the main thing, and that's how it's going to look from above. It's like, sure, why not? Maybe it's going to look like this. And then I'm just going to explore it a little bit more. What the aliens will look like inside the ship. Are they going to look like this, or are they going to look like this? Weird and funky, I'm like, what about the moment where the Vikings discovered the engine for the first time? Maybe they thought it was some kind of totem. And I did a bunch of like little 3D pre-visualization. What does it look like this? What does it look like from this angle? And then you start sketching, and then you get to the final painting. Like, what do the gates look like? Does it look like this? Does it look like that? And stuff like that. It's so about questioning, what does the world feels like? What you just live in it. Like another thing that I did was similar to this, because in the world of Lumber Saga, there's another location where a ship crashed and it split the mountain into two, and they made a passageway opened into a seashore where there's water and a little bit of mountains. And you know what? The city between the walls were born. And then back in the days, they had different main characters, but I was like, what if Drakars or Vikings can fly? And you can see some Treasure Planet influences here. I'm not hiding it. We are what we're inspired by. In Treasure Planet, people, they were inspired by something else. That's totally fine. Like, what does a floating tavern is gonna look like? Is this guy who's gonna just trade biomechanical arms for Vikings? Like, what a Viking biker is gonna look like, And then I painted a little keyframe, like what the sailor will look like, or like a anti-gravity ship that that pushes out the water, stuff like that. Maybe it could look something like this, and you never know where your idea can take you, because many years from now, like, my painting style has changed, but the core of the story is still there, because you have to understand that the most valuable thing that you have right now in your brain is your ideas. The execution and the skills, how to make those, how to paint those, will come. But the quality of your ideas is what you can develop right now, because you might not be able to paint it right here now, right? But you write it down and you wait for the right moment when your skills are up to date to execute something. You know what? You can always repaint something. It doesn't matter how well your painting is executed, as long as the main idea and the quality of idea is there. So yeah, see, like, I am even exploring it more. Like, what do the Vikings of the Lumber Saga look like? Kor does not like to share loot, He just knocked this guy on the head, and it's like, because he was trying to steal a coin from him, like, Korg angry, And then it's like, Gunhilda Ironbraid, it's kind of, Rapunzel was a poser, and she's just like super cool. I was like, what if Viking chicks, use their braids as weapons? It's like, why not? Let's go there, And sorry guys, this is me. So, like, what you have to understand is, the sky is the limit. And then big balls Duncan, not because of what you think, but he comes in like a wrecking ball, You have to have fun with your characters, with your world, and see how it all comes together, right? Because each of you guys have a different perspective on life, you know? And I hope that through my artwork, you can see me, because you're listening to me right now, and probably my artwork makes much more sense to you, and you can maybe look at it a little bit differently, or maybe you're like, you know what? This totally fits. This is totally Misha. Because the thing is, in every single one of you guys, you have your own story. You know, you have your own artistic voice, and you have your own thing that you're gonna say, and nothing that you do can be done by another person, because you only live your life the way you live. Sorry, I'm gonna be distracted a little bit. This is a really cool guy, because every time I develop something and I build my world and I think of the characters, a huge little story can come from a painting like this. And you should train this, look at a painting of yours or a character or a doodle and try to figure out. So when I painted this was, by the way, one of the Viking challenges that we did with you guys, Valhalla for Artists gang. We did one Viking a day for the month of February, because that's when my birthday is. And I'm like, and this is Bork Hammer Song. And the idea behind this character was, he was called Bork Hammer Song because his hammer was so loud and going doing, doing, dong, ding, ding, dong during battle that his personal assistant would try to make up a melody for each of the battles that he was on, and then put words on top of it. So when Bork Hammer Song would charge into battle, a song would be played. Song of blood and metal, because his hammer is just going just like a church bell. Boing, boing against all enemies, Yes, he's kind of like a mythical creature that lives in that world, And then you can how does a sci-fi Viking looks like, because you have to understand. I like the General Grievous design, so I was trying to incorporate the old with the new and see how it's gonna look like. And I'm like, what? Vikings have beards. What if, a chain design can replace his beard? And this is Bjorn Ironside. Literally has a iron side, right? And yeah, you just think about your world, think who lives in it, who inhabits it. And sometimes, the world itself could be very fascinating, Even before a story is made, usually, I know, the classic way is you should have a story first, Usually you should have a story first, and then you build a world around it. But, sometimes you can just get excited about the world, explore, think about it, about the design aspect of it, and then from that you can find a story, That's how you can build your story. You can build your project. You come up with the world first, and then you find some super special, precious story to you in there. Some people start with the story first, and then they build a world around it. My personal approach to it was this: world and story came to me at the same time. It was it started with a little sketch of a cyborg lumberjack lady. And that's where it started. It's so bizarre to look back at it, because my Viking project started with just a sketch of a weird robot lady and a little house in the woods. And then it went, remember, through puzzle building, step by step, it came to what it is now, and it's still a big jibber jabber, But now I have character of Olaf. I am, I love spending time with this guy, this monster hunter with his little dog Gruel. It's this character would have not came to existence if I didn't start somewhere and didn't end up here. It's like an endless game of association, What if this, then that? What if this, then that? And you can be this guy's hey, you little monster, do you want to get some meat? And there's a trap behind, and the dog goes, brr, and then it's and stealing an egg from a firebug, why not firebugs, giant firebugs in a Viking world, Why not giant, giant titans and then slingshotting them that so hard that their shoes come off, you know, and a bit of dog's hair is still in the air, you know. It's like, why not have like giant Krampus creatures and like and stuff like that, you know? Why not have a bunch of goblins, you know, attacking them during the night and stealing the dog, you know? Because the thing is, like, what's next, you know? What's gonna happen? How does the world feels? Where I'm gonna end up in, you know? Where it's like, what about a, you know, giant spider dog? No, spider dog. Spider, yeah, why not? A giant spider dog, a giant spider wall or gate, you know, and a real, you know, spider going, you know, at the ceiling, you know. And then sometimes you start, you know, you just explore the world like this, you know. And then, you know what? A moment like this happens, you know, a weird house in the middle of nowhere. Maybe it was flooded before, maybe not, you know. There's a bunch of, like, you know, zombie dudes that are like, you know, all dried up and stuff. And then there's there's a skeleton doing the rock and roll sign. Yeah, and you think, you're like, you know what? There's something about this house. I didn't know what was exactly, but I was like, I knew that 3 spider ladies lived in that house, and for some reason, they were trying to cook a baby. I know it's super messed up, but you know what? Sometimes that's what you imagine, and you know what? You're like, what's my main character is gonna do? You know, it's part of the world building. It's like some images just pop into your head, and you know, and they're salting the water, and then they have the carrot prepared, and they're about to steer him up. But you know what? He's probably gonna save him. You know, the dog and Gruel and Olaf are gonna save him. You know what? Later on, the kid is fine. Over a sudden, this guy has a kid. I never knew that he could be a kid. And when you're developing your world, you can feel like a father sometimes to your own characters, because you have, like, this was an accident. I have no idea how this character came to life, but it's through associative thinking and through discovering, you know. The bear goes, "Rah!" And then the kids go, "Ah, ha, ha, the sword is mine." And these guys like, Loki. This is Loki, by the way. Yeah, and then it's like, you know, the final moment's like, okay, he has his own final sword, and this guy's all beat up and grumpy, you know. And those awesome moments come from, first, you having fun, you exploring, and you questioning how your world works, and then answering their questions. And through different questions and answers, you end up in the most amazing place that you might never figure it out in the beginning when you were just staring at your canvas. That your project is going to be this. Because, you know, through questions, you answer, and then you end up somewhere. Because I can tell you this. There's a big misconception that world building is this. Some guy basically says, come up with this world, and he's like a printer. He says, here you go, sir. Here's frame 1, frame 3, and he just prints them like a printer. No. Most of the job is completed in our brains, you know. And it's dictated, our world, right, is dictated by our story. You know, and every project is different. Like, for example, game development projects usually start, what's our gameplay, what's our main character, let's build around that, and what our technical limitations are. See, we're all building with limitations a little bit for games. You know, for animation, I'm like, okay, we have this character in this story, what the world is all about. You know, some projects may start, you know what, we don't care what the main characters are, and our main character is the world itself, you know. But it always starts with a simple statement, you know. Simple statement. Right? What is the simple statement? So, for example, for the Goblin game, it's like goblins taking over the world, you know. For my Viking project, it's like, what if the alien technology explains the Norse mythology, you know, the myths, the gods, the miracles, the electricity, the Mjolnir, you know. That's the simple statement, you know. Something that sparks interest, something that gives you ideas. And then, after your simple statement, or the main question, you know, simple statement, what is it? You start. And you start somewhere. And I call it starting point. you find a moment in the story or in the world where you just gonna start. You're just gonna build from there. That's, if this is a roadmap, this is where you start. You have no idea. It's a fog of war here. So what you do, you start here, and this is your stage 1, and then you start going into unknown. And that's okay. It could be terrifying. You could be really good at imagining, and it comes with practice. Imagination is a muscle. So for example, if you give me, a few sentences or a few words, I can come up with a story basically on the spot. Like, I don't know, if you could find like a pencil on the table, you're like, you know what, this pencil was a tree some long time ago. Where does this tree come from? And who chopped it down? And who planted that tree? Did that farmer have like, some tragic backstory? Did he plant this tree in memory of his wife long time ago that died under super tragic and mysterious circumstances, And he swore to his enemies that he will have his revenge. And now this pencil is laying down on the table of his enemy. And then when this enemy falls asleep, the pencil comes alive, grows legs, and then lounges itself right in the eye of a sleeping enemy. So, see, I thought of a pencil on a table, and then a story popped out into my brain. I know it's a little bit stupid, but it was kind of like story freestyle. But that's how my brain works, And for some of you, it's going to be hard. For some of you, it's going to be easy, But it is something that you can develop, So let's go back into what to keep in mind. What's the kind of like pipeline and checklist. So first is the simple statement, right? Vikings and aliens, goblins and technology, In that simple statement or a log line, it's called in script writing, it's like you can have a main theme in there. And that theme could be like, for the lumber cycle world, is broken people trying to get their lives together. That's my main theme. And you know what? I'm pretty consistent with it. You can see it in my scripts that you never read, but believe me, it's there. For Guns and Goblins, it has to be fun, it has to be tribal, it has to be a... And did I achieve the in my images? I think I did, Sorry, I can't figure out the word that will fit the description, so that's the only word I could come up with. That was the sound, And then you start, you start anywhere, and whatever makes sense the most for your story. So if it's, if it's a tragic story, try to figure out, the main dilemma right away, or, it all depends, and then build from there, And after the starting point, you're gonna get, question 1, answer, and that's gonna bring to question 2, answer it, and then you go. But the thing is, you keep in mind that simple statement. Am I still designing for my original story and idea, for my original plot or simple statement, or I was designing a world for, let's say, like a little girl who is traveling to her grandma's place, but for some reason I am in Africa spending time with an African tribe, drinking ayahuasca or something like that. It's like, oh, went too far a little bit, have to go back to the girl, traveling to her grandpa's house or grandma's house. See what I'm saying? So yeah, questions in world building is good. Try to be your characters. Try to live there, right? Try to figure out what would you do in this situation, what would those people do, and that will dictate first design aspect of things in the world. It's gonna dictate emotional state of the heroes, you know, and how the world feels. It's gonna dictate the color palettes. Because the thing is, if you're gonna question yourself, how do I want to feel, and you answer it, you're like, okay, that's how it should feel, and then you paint it, and you're gonna say, this doesn't feel like I want it to, right? And that's gonna be your point of reference for your world. So questions are good, always, and you're not gonna have answer for, well, majority of those. So you just start little by little, brick by brick, you know, until, well, honestly, you can go forever. But in our case, we go with the world building and visual development until all of the story purposes are solved, or story needs are solved. So for example, for Iron Giant, right? Let's get, remember, just the other day we had a watch party for Iron Giant. So Iron Giant project, you know, what do we need in Iron Giant? It's like, well, the story is local in a town, right? It's a little town, a little village. So let's start there. What does the town look like? What does the robot look like? What do the main characters look like? See, world building in the context of our story. It's a local story. It's not far wide, right? And then it's like, all right, what's the military vehicles look like? You know, what's the keyframe of the boy meeting the giant for the first time looks like? See, if we have context is what brings structure. Context is what gives you an idea where to go and where to push. And if you are lost and you don't know what to design, where to take your story and what to do, that means you lost your eyesight on context. And you have to go back to the simple statement, right? Because simple statement of Iron Giant is, as you remember from the documentary, what if a gun had a soul? That was the log line, you know? What if a gun was sentient? And that gun was represented by Iron Giant, who is actually a weapon, who can think and who doesn't want to kill, you know? And then everything else was dictating the designs, the story, the place where it would be, the forest scene with the deer, where Iron Giant sees murder for the first time, so on, so on, and so on. So simple statement is that's what we're looking for. So now to homework. What is your simple statement, right? You have to answer one simple thing. First, so we made a mood board, right? That's complete. Some of you did some writing. That's good. My mood board, for example, for Guns and Goblins looked something like this, you know? It wasn't big. It was mainly for like color and lighting and stuff like that. The rest I had in my brain, you know, but you already have mood boards. Cool? Cool. You know the feeling of your world, you know the main, the main things you want to see in there. You probably maybe know the creatures, maybe you know your main character, maybe you know the supporting cast that is going to be in there. Maybe you know the creatures and the monsters, and the colors that you're going to use in there and stuff like that. And hopefully you know your main theme of your world, of your story. So that's all good. You've done that. So now we're actually going to go into painting. So our first painting assignment for your own world is going to paint something like this. And you remember I showed you some examples in the Discord channel. One of them was Toby's painting. It's a hero facing the world. It's a starting point that can then give you, the necessary information to kind of push here or here, That's what I call, remember when I told you guys, starting point, when I drew those things. Where are my words? Hey, was I making notes here? Never mind. So that's what I call the starting point, right? So we're gonna do starting point image. It's your character You can make it simple. You can make it complex. If you don't have its design, it's fine. Just have something. I didn't design those goblins in the beginning. I just painted them. Whatever came out of me came out. Your character plus environment. What's the purpose of this shot? It's a starting image. I'm gonna put it point. Starting point image. It's your character plus your environment. What it's gonna serve? It's gonna give you, it's gonna serve as fuel. As you know, if you have this, it's gonna give you associative thinking. You're gonna go like, what if this? Think of an idea. What if that? Think of an idea. What about this? Think of an idea. Because another thing is, visual development pieces should, first of all, yes, answer questions, right? It should answer them. But also, it should bring questions. What happened before this image? And what is going to happen after this image, for example? With the painting that we're doing right now, maybe we're not going to have that many questions, right? But this is just theory for the future, right? Because it's good when an audience or a director are going to be satisfied with an answer, which is like, well, this is a goblin world with super cool things in it. But also they're going to be like left wanting more. It's like, what led up to this moment? What's going to go after? Because you know what? Answering every question in one painting is impossible. So you know what? Leave out some things for imagination to your viewer and to yourself. So yeah, we're going to do starting point image, your character in an environment, kind of like this. For more detail, don't worry, I will post the homework and the homework assignment channel, right? And you're just gonna paint your character in an environment. If you want some creature in it, somewhere in the background, like I have a dragon flying, sure. Your goal is to do this. Test out your mood, test out your idea really fast, very loose. You're gonna have 6 days to do it. So until 5 days. Well, anyways, until next Monday. Officially, the deadline is going to be this Saturday, but it's okay. You can take your time until Monday if you're not going to want feedback. But if you want feedback, this Saturday, I'm going to have to take a look at all of your characters, and we're going to have first feedback session this Saturday. Disclaimer, there's 1,700 of you on the Discord, and I'm going to be picking 5 people each week to do personal feedback. How I'm picking those people, I already talked about it in the What is Valhalla for Artists chat. It's going to be beginner artists who don't have that much opportunities in life, and they won't be able to afford personal feedback. So people who are more well off, sorry, or try to leave place for the little guy, right? Because that's why we're doing this. Anyways, back to the homework. What's going to be useful questions that you should question yourself? So first, when you're going to be starting this, so we did a mood board. Mood board is not reference, okay? It's kind of reference, but it's not specific reference. So mood board is a mood board. It's just there to stare. How I'll use a mood board. I use a mood board like this. I stare at it. I smile. And then I close it. And then start painting. Because it's there for me. Like, that moment in Be Careful, there's a chance of meatballs or something like that. Where there's a crazy scientist, he's like, inspiration! He looks at the wall with a bunch of posters, and then he does something. So I use mood board like cool idea generation thing that, just enriches me with something, It's not necessarily there to totally dictate the reference and stuff like that. I use it as an inspiration. But then when it's time to actually do things and I have my simple statement figured out, my story, what's my story about? Then, what's the simple statement of, for example, this picture? goblins just dug out and found out the real world or the surface world. That's the simple statement, you know. Then after the simple statement, I gather references. Okay. References. I usually do 10 perfect references. Do you know what a perfect reference is? A perfect reference is a piece of a picture, you know, a reference that doesn't bring more questions, but answers more questions that it gives, okay? So a perfect piece of reference is a piece of reference that doesn't raise questions, but answers them. Because I've seen like hundreds of references that people usually collect, and there's like so much information, later on they use it for nothing. So we have a mood board, has a lot of reference in there. But now we're gonna actually gather reference, or you can choose them out of your mood boards. 10 perfect pieces of, it could be photo, it could be a screenshot of animation that answers your questions for your painting. What is the mood? What is the lighting? What is the color? What is the style? What is the composition? What are the values? Etc., etc., etc. Maybe here and there, what is the design? But again, perfect reference is a reference that answers questions, doesn't raise them. 10, maximum 10. Because you're gonna test your ability, how well you understand your idea, if you can just basically collect 10 references and be happy with them. Because the main thing why people collect hundreds and hundreds and thousands of references for one painting, because they don't know what the hell they want to paint. And they have no idea what their simple statement is. But if your simple statement is this, you can have one reference, you already know what you want to paint. Okay? So yeah, 10 perfect references, figure out what your simple statement is, right? So what your story is about, what the image is about. If you want, you can write down a simple sentence, like goblins digging themselves out of, and looking in amazement at the world. You know, if the sentence will make your life easier, do that. You know, and the third thing is just start painting. Paint. You'll have 6 days. Make it rough, you know, kind of like this. If you could paint something like this, it would be cool, you know, but, you know, not much reference. Some people may think that this is too complex for them. You know, we have many, you know, levels of skill here. And I'm going to tell you this. If your painting is not going to look like this or going to look better or worse, it doesn't matter. We are not judging our work by how well it looks. We are using this to start. We just need a jump start, a starting point to kickstart. There's a lot of start in my sentences lately. Just to figure out where our story begins. And after that, little spoiler, after our character and environment, because what we would do, we test the story out first, we see what the environment is, we see what the character feels like, we see what the colors are, we see what the style is, and then that's going to dictate our keyframes. We're going to do 3 keyframes for your project, just like in the goblins that I did, you know. Those things are keyframes, you know. We're going to paint 3 of them. So just imagine that those are the keyframes. We're going to paint something like this, you know, and this, our beginning image, is going to pave the way for those 3 images. Also, we're going to paint 2 environments, a character inside his house and outside his house, you know. But see, we cannot start right away there. We need to figure out how your world feels first. You know, we're gonna get a first bite, a first smell out of it, and then base everything else on this painting. So, not too much pressure. This is just exploration phase. Don't stress over it too much. You know, just put it out, finish not perfect. 6 days, more than enough. Deadline this Saturday. If you want to have feedback. If you don't want to have feedback, work a chance at feedback, okay? Because I'll be choosing only 5 people, because honestly, I'm a little bit on a Saturday. I'll try to keep our feedback sessions as fast as possible, because even Misha has his limits. Yeah, so I think this is gonna be it for today in terms of actual theory, and hopefully this was useful on how I approach world building, you know, where do I start and stuff like that. And I will try to read your questions. What's the difference between the starting image and the keyframe? Can the starting image be a keyframe? A starting image could be a keyframe. The thing is, I'm giving you a formula how to start your project, but the thing is, if you are good at self-directing, if you are good at figuring things out by yourself, and you want to, and it makes more sense for you to start with a key moment, for example, go ahead. What I'm doing, I just trying to provide structure for more a little bit unexperienced people, or for people who need structure and tasks to do. So all of my homeworks that I'm doing, listen to them with a grain of salt. So if you're a more experienced artist, or if you have a better idea of what you want to do for your story, use my lectures as inspiration material and theory material how to think, right? But you can come up with your own homework, and that's fine. So if we're doing I'm saying a character and an environment, you're like, you know what, I want to do a keyframe. But do try to follow along, because we do trying to have a structure. But you know what, you're responsible for yourself, and you do as you please. Okay, next. Dun, 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 dun. Trying to find. Yeah, beginning doesn't mean literally the beginning of your story, but beginning of your exploration of the world. Yep. Beginning of your first idea, little first image that you paint for your world. Yep. So that's the purpose of this thing. It doesn't have to be, but it should be cool if you have your character and in an environment, because we're testing 2 things at the same time. But starting point doesn't mean the beginning of your world. Yes, it means the start of exploration of your world, the most that makes sense. And for each project, it's different things. I can't come up with everything, because, like, for example, for the Incredibles, I'm like, we have a story about the Incredibles, the superheroes. Where do we start? Well, the conflict first is the Incredibles are outlawed. Maybe we'll start with some newspaper images of them being in the courtroom. That could be it. For each project, it's a different thing. They could have, yeah. Let's do 2 or 3 more questions. What if there are 2 main heroes who see the same world in different ways? Should I decide on one main character? Is this supposed to be the beginning of the story of just the hero's view of the world? Good question. If you have 2 heroes, like for example, I have the Olaf and Gruul story, right? Where are you guys? Yeah, this one. And at first it's from perspective of a dog, and the thing is, you're not gonna do a first-person camera, right? So you're gonna have a camera pointing at them. So technically, you are telling a story from your point of view about those characters. So don't overcomplicate things. Just paint both of those characters in an environment, and just figure out how the world feels. Boom, 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 boom. All right, one last question. Let me see. Dun, 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 dun. All right, no questions, but the thing is, I'm really bad with the chat, and that's okay. We're trying to keep this lecture, as quiet as fast as possible. But then we're gonna jump into Discord server itself, and I'm gonna, just as usual, answer some of your questions. So party continues in our Discord server. For people who missed the live stream and the Discord stream, I'm sorry. Please participate in the live of our little Viking village, because that's how you get the most value out of it, you know. And as final words, you know, I want to say this. It's your world. Have fun with it. Explore. Make noises like you know, go into battle like listen to cool music, you know. Fall in love with your character, you know. Figure out how your main character smells, what he wears, you know. What kind of mannerisms he has, you know, or she has, you know, and like what creatures inhabit it, you know. And I really hope that at the beginning of the lecture you did feel that I had a lot of fun painting the goblin world or my own world, you know. And that's what world building is all about. That's what visual development is all about. Is first of all having fun and getting excited about your story. And you know what? If you're not getting excited and if you're not having fun, there's something wrong, and you have to figure out. It could be in your main statement. It could be maybe you need an advice or you need some second opinion, you know, because even though if you're suffering and you're frustrated with your own work, the technical work, the inner mind process, the brainstorming aspect of it has to be super fun. It has to be exciting. It has to be joyful, right? You have to feel lucky that you can spend. It's like a superpower that you can spend all this time in a non-existent world all by yourself, and you can change anything in it because, well, you're the god of that world, you know. So, anyways, that'll be it for today. I hope this was fun. I hope it was not too over the place. I hope you learned something new. Anyways, you guys stay hydrated. I'll meet you in the Discord chat. We're gonna talk a little bit, you know. And you know what? Good job. Like, really, good job with those mood boards. There's so many dedication that I see here. And honestly, like, it's really inspiring to me that this thing is taking off. And I'm proud of you guys. You are doing very well. Anyways, meet you in Discord very soon. Stay hydrated. Skål. Tell your own stories. Don't forget to call your mom and grandma. Bye-bye.